The first thing I felt was the weight. Not pain, though that came later, but a heavy, suffocating pressure, like my entire body had been pinned beneath something enormous. I couldn't move. My arms felt like concrete. My legs didn't respond. Even my eyelids, when I finally wrestled them open, seemed like they didn't belong to me anymore. The sterile white ceiling above me spun in slow motion, fluorescent lights buzzing like wasps in my ears. I blinked again, trying to piece together where I was, why I was here. And then, the machines answered before I could. Rhythmic beeping, the slow hiss of oxygen, the antiseptic stench I couldn't escape. A hospital. My mouth was dry, too dry to speak. I tried anyway. Nothing came out but a raspy, breathless whisper. Panic pulsed through me like electricity. My heart began to race, and the machines responded with an alarm. That's when I saw him, Derek, my husband of 10 years. He leaned in close, his face full of something that could have passed for concern to anyone else, but I caught it. The hesitation. The calculation behind his eyes. "We didn't think you'd wake up," he said softly, almost too softly, like he didn't mean for me to hear it. But I did. And even through the fog in my brain, I knew something was wrong. Deeply, terrifyingly wrong. He reached for my hand, but I couldn't return the gesture. I simply lay there, taking in his rehearsed sadness, the perfect crease in his forehead, the tight grip on his jaw like grief was something he had to summon. I watched his lips twitch with unspoken words, then finally stretch into a practiced smile. "The doctors said it was a miracle," he murmured, brushing hair back from my forehead with trembling fingers. "You've been unconscious for almost a week." A week. My heart stuttered. A week of being lost in darkness, in silence, in vulnerability. I tried to remember anything. The crash. There was metal screaming. My hands on the steering wheel. Headlights in the rain. And then, nothing. Derek sat beside me, but the space between us felt vast. He kept talking, but I was no longer listening. My mind ran circles around the fragments I could recall. Why had I been alone? Where had I been going? Why did his voice sound like relief laced with regret? I must have drifted off again because the next time I opened my eyes, the room was dim and Derek was gone. A nurse came in to check my for. Her name tag read, Elena, and she gave me a gentle smile that didn't try to mask pity. "You scared a lot of people," she said kindly. "But you're strong. You're going to be okay." I wanted to ask her where Derek had gone, but my throat refused. I tried to speak again, and this time, a hoarse whisper escaped. "Water." She beamed. "That's a good sign. Let me get you some." She brought it in a plastic cup with a bendy straw, and the first sip felt like heaven. My voice barely worked, but I got out, "Car crash." Elena nodded gently. "Single vehicle. They said the brakes failed. You hit a guardrail. The impact was severe." "Single vehicle? I was alone?" That didn't make sense. Derek always insisted on driving in bad weather. And that night, yes, it was raining. I remembered that. Barely. But I'd been behind the wheel. That much I knew. After she left, I stared at the ceiling again, willing my memories to return, willing my limbs to move. My body was sore, my ribs wrapped tight, my left arm immobilized in a sling. I was broken, but I was awake. And my instincts told me that was a problem for someone. Later, Derek came back, phone in hand. He smiled when he saw me watching him. "Rest, love," he said, placing a kiss on my forehead that made my skin crawl. "You need all your strength." But I didn't close my eyes. I didn't sleep. Not this time. Something wasn't right. And for the first time since I woke up, I didn't feel lucky. I felt hunted. The hallway light spilled in through the crack in the door, casting a narrow line across the hospital floor. Everything around me was still. Machines hummed in a steady rhythm, and I kept my breathing low and even, playing the part of the recovering patient drifting back to sleep. But my eyes were open, fixed on the shadows beyond the curtain. Something had stirred me from a shallow, restless doze. Voices. Familiar ones. Low, sharp, too urgent to be casual. I barely moved my head, just enough to track the sound. It was Derek. That much I knew instantly. His voice was quiet, but not gentle. And then came another voice. My sister's. Chloe. I felt the crack then. Like something inside me splintered. Chloe was supposed to be in Florida. She'd only called once since I'd been in the hospital, her voice rushed and guilt-laced, saying she was caught up in work but would visit soon. But now, she was here. And whispering with my husband. I can't believe she made it, Derek muttered. The doctors were convinced she wouldn't wake up. There was a silence. A beat too long. She still might not fully recover, Chloe answered. Brain trauma's unpredictable. She could fade again. Fade again? My breath caught. I forced myself to remain still. What the hell were they talking about? Derek let out a short, bitter laugh. It doesn't matter. She's finally out of the picture. That sentence echoed in my ears like a gunshot. Out of the picture. Not in pain. Not struggling. Not in need of help. Out of the way. My heart thudded against my chest so hard I thought it might set off the monitors. And then Chloe spoke again, softer now, her words like venom wrapped in silk. The insurance payout will go through as long as they consider her condition terminal. You said the papers were already signed, right? Right, Derek said, without hesitation. And the beneficiaries are already updated. I felt like I was sinking into the mattress, like the bed had turned to quicksand. Insurance. Payouts. Beneficiaries. Terminal. My husband and my sister. Plotting, scheming, in the same breath that they spoke about my recovery, they were preparing for my death. My fingers twitched beneath the blanket, a small, involuntary jerk of rage. I didn't even feel the pain of movement. I was too busy listening to my world crumble. You still have the envelope? Chloe asked. Locked up. Along with everything else. Just in case. And the tattoos, she added with a laugh that made my skin crawl. Oh, matching. Same night we got the hotel suite. My stomach turned. That detail was so sharp it cut through the fog of betrayal like a knife. Matching tattoos. Hotel suites. The woman I had called my best friend growing up, the one who used to braid my hair and share secrets with me under the covers, had crawled into bed with my husband and carved their bond into their skin while I fought for my life. I wanted to scream. To sit up and tear the curtain open. To make them look me in the eyes and explain how they could do this. But I didn't move. Not yet. Because something had already shifted inside me, something irreversible. My pain, my confusion, it all crystallized into something colder. Something sharper. I waited until the voices drifted farther down the hall, their footsteps echoing away toward the elevators. Then I allowed myself to blink, to breathe, to feel. There was no denying it now. The car crash wasn't just bad luck or faulty brakes. They wanted me gone. Derek and Chloe, my whole world, my family, had conspired to erase me. And for what? Money? Freedom? Each other? I stared up at the ceiling again, but this time it didn't feel sterile. It felt like a vault. A tomb they meant to bury me in. But they didn't count on me waking up. I could feel the rage simmering under my skin. It didn't matter that my bones were broken or that I could barely lift my arms. My mind was fully awake and my instincts were screaming one thing: survive. If they thought I was out of the picture, then I needed to stay that way. At least until I could figure out what to do next. They had no idea I'd heard them. No clue that the woman they tried to silence was about to become their worst nightmare. A plan began to form, hazy at first, but gaining clarity with each breath I took. I'd been underestimated. Erased. But I wasn't done. I wasn't gone. And I sure as hell wasn't going to die for their vacation plans and tattooed lies. By morning, the walls of the hospital room felt like they were pressing in on me. The sun filtered through the blinds in pale slats, casting bars across the end of my bed, as if I needed a reminder that I was trapped. I didn't sleep, not really. I spent the night memorizing every second of that conversation, every word Derek and Chloe exchanged like it was nothing more than gossip. My rage had matured overnight. No more shock. No more heartbreak. I wasn't mourning the life I lost. I was preparing for the war I hadn't seen coming. I waited until Elena, the nurse, made her morning rounds and left me alone with the tray of tasteless breakfast and a pill cup. As soon as the door clicked shut, I reached for the remote and turned up the volume on the TV. just enough to cover any whispers. Then, I did what I hadn't done in years. I reached for a name I'd tucked away like a secret weapon. Alex Rivera. I met Alex nearly 6 years ago when he was a mess of pain and anger, recovering from the loss of his sister. I was a grief counselor back then, still believing I could fix other people's wounds even while ignoring my own. We helped each other in ways neither of us ever put into words. He was more than a client. He was someone who knew what it meant to claw your way back from the edge. I hadn't spoken to him in a long time, not since Derek pressured me to keep boundaries with clients, but my gut told me he'd answer. He always promised he would if I ever needed him. This time I did. I found the hospital phone on the side table and pulled it closer with my good hand. The numbers felt foreign under my fingers, like I was dialing into another life. My voice trembled slightly when I spoke his number into the automated dialer. Ring. Ring. Then a click. Yeah? My chest tightened. Alex, it's me. It's Sam. A pause. Then, sharper. Samantha. I swallowed, voice low. I don't have long. I need your help. There was a shift in his tone instantly, his voice dropping into that calm, razor-sharp register I remembered. Are you safe? I laughed, bitter and low. That's debatable. You're in the hospital, right? I saw something online. Car crash? Derek tried to kill me. And he didn't do it alone. Silence on the line. I knew he was processing. Who? He finally asked. My sister. Chloe. Another beat. Then, tell me everything. I did. Every word. I whispered what I'd overheard. The insurance, the tattoos, the way they spoke like I was already dead. And he listened, really listened, without interrupting. When I finished, I waited. No plan, no idea what he could even do. I just needed someone I could trust. Alex exhaled. I'll be on the next flight. But if they know you're awake. They don't, I cut in. Not really. They think I'm confused. And maybe I can use that. There was silence on his end for a second, and then the sound of typing. You want to play dead, he said flatly. I want to disappear. I want them to think they've won. Sam, that's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. But I've got one shot at this. I need time to get stronger. I need to see what they've done. I need proof. Another pause, longer this time. I imagined him there, jaw tight, probably already pacing. Finally, he spoke. All right. I'll make calls. We'll start now. You're not doing this alone. My eyes stung. Relief flooded through me, painful in its suddenness. Thank you. No need, he said simply. You saved me once. Let me return the favor. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. From the first taste of control I'd had since I opened my eyes. I wasn't sure how yet or how far this would go, but one thing was clear now. They wanted me gone. They were about to regret not finishing the job. Elena brought my afternoon meds with her usual gentle smile, not knowing that I'd spent the last hour rehearsing how I'd swallow only half and hide the rest under my tongue. I gave her the same weak nod I'd perfected over the past few days, just enough to look like I was grateful, recovering, still the broken woman everyone expected. But in reality, I was sharpening. Quietly, carefully. When she left, I spit the pills into a napkin, folded it once, then again, and tucked it beneath the bed's edge. My body still ached in ways that made movement miserable, but I didn't have the luxury of time. Derek and Chloe thought I was fading. I needed them to believe it completely. And Alex had a plan. He'd arrived that morning, but no one saw him. That was the beauty of working with someone who understood secrets. He didn't walk in wearing a suit or flash a badge. He came dressed as a tech repairman for the nurses' station computers. Sunglasses, cap, fake ID. The whole cliché, and somehow it worked. He stood in the doorway for just 5 seconds, long enough for our eyes to meet and for him to mouth, "We're on." That was all I needed. The next time Derek visited, I was ready. He walked in with a bouquet of white lilies, too symbolic to be coincidence, and that stupid crease between his eyebrows he always wore when pretending to be concerned. I let my head roll slightly to the side, unfocused my eyes, and blinked like it took effort. He came to the edge of my bed and studied me, probably looking for signs that I was regaining too much strength. I gave him none. "Hey," he said softly, placing the flowers in the sterile blue vase. "You looked better yesterday." "Good." Let him think I was declining. "They said your vitals were off this morning. Guess the doctors were wrong about the recovery curve." I didn't answer. Just blinked slowly. Let my mouth go slack. He watched me for a while, and I could feel the calculations forming behind his eyes again. He was wondering how long he had to keep up the charade. Wondering if he should call the insurance company again. I wanted so badly to scream, to lunge for his throat, but instead, I let my jaw tremble. I made a small sound, not quite a groan, but something just pathetic enough to be believable. He leaned in. "You're holding on, huh? Stubborn girl." He actually sounded amused. Disappointed, but amused. As if I were a puzzle piece that refused to snap into place. He stayed for 20 minutes, checking his phone more than he looked at me. When he finally left, I let out a slow, measured breath. He bought it. Over the next 2 days, we laid the rest of the groundwork. Alex arranged for a small monitor to be hidden behind the cabinet opposite my bed. A camera with a motion trigger that sent video directly to a secure folder on his server. Every conversation, every visit recorded. Elena, sweet soul that she was, agreed to misplace some of my updated vitals in the system. Nothing major. Just enough to stall progress and muddy the recovery record. When I asked her why she was helping me, her eyes glossed. "I've seen men like him," she said. "And women like her." That was all she had to say. We were allies from that moment on. By day 4, my official status on the hospital charts was non-responsive. Alex had even contacted an old colleague of his to pose as a neurologist and sign off on it. Everything was falling into place. Then, Chloe showed up. She entered like she was doing charity work, dressed in soft pastels and false grief. She brought a teddy bear and placed it beside me like we were still 10 years old and playing house. I could feel the rage boil beneath my skin as she smoothed my hair and whispered, "I hope you find peace, Sam." Peace. That was her version of a goodbye. Her way of laying the final nail. But I wasn't dead. I wasn't even close. The most difficult part came that night. Derek returned again, and this time, Chloe came with him. They stood over me, speaking in hushed tones, touching my hand, the way mourners do when they're practicing for a funeral. I kept my breathing shallow, let my eyes roll back a little, just enough to mimic unconsciousness. Chloe leaned down and kissed my forehead. "She's not going to make it," she whispered. "We need to start preparing." They left not long after, and the moment the door closed, I let my facade drop. My muscles ached from the tension, but I didn't care. It was working. They believed it. They thought I was slipping away, but I was rising. And they had no idea what was coming. Elena brought my afternoon meds with her usual gentle smile, not knowing that I'd spent the last hour rehearsing how I'd swallow only half and hide the rest under my tongue. I gave her the same weak nod I'd perfected over the past few days, just enough to look like I was grateful, recovering, still the broken woman everyone expected. But in reality, I was sharpening. Quietly, carefully. When she left, I spit the pills into a napkin, folded it once, then again, and tucked it beneath the bed's edge. My body still ached in ways that made movement miserable, but I didn't have the luxury of time. Derek and Chloe thought I was fading. I needed them to believe it completely. And Alex had a plan. He'd arrived that morning, but no one saw him. That was the beauty of working with someone who understood secrets. He didn't walk in wearing a suit or flash a badge. He came dressed as a tech repairman for the nurses' station computers. Sunglasses, cap, fake ID. The whole cliché, and somehow it worked. He stood in the doorway for just 5 seconds, long enough for our eyes to meet and for him to mouth, "We're on." That was all I needed. The next time Derek visited, I was ready. He walked in with a bouquet of white lilies, too symbolic to be coincidence, and that stupid crease between his eyebrows he always wore when pretending to be concerned. I let my head roll slightly to the side, unfocused my eyes, and blinked like it took effort. He came to the edge of my bed and studied me. probably looking for signs that I was regaining too much strength. I gave him none. "Hey," he said softly, placing the flowers in the sterile blue vase. "You looked better yesterday." "Good." Let him think I was declining. "They said your vitals were off this morning. Guess the doctors were wrong about the recovery curve." I didn't answer. Just blinked slowly. Let my mouth go slack. He watched me for a while, and I could feel the calculations forming behind his eyes again. He was wondering how long he had to keep up the charade. Wondering if he should call the insurance company again. I wanted so badly to scream, to lunge for his throat, but instead, I let my jaw tremble. I made a small sound, not quite a groan, but something just pathetic enough to be believable. He leaned in. "You're holding on, huh? Stubborn girl." He actually sounded amused. Disappointed, but amused. As if I were a puzzle piece that refused to snap into place. He stayed for 20 minutes, checking his phone more than he looked at me. When he finally left, I let out a slow, measured breath. He bought it. Over the next 2 days, we laid the rest of the groundwork. Alex arranged for a small monitor to be hidden behind the cabinet opposite my bed, a camera with a motion trigger that sent video directly to a secure folder on his server. Every conversation, every visit recorded. Elena, sweet soul that she was, agreed to misplace some of my updated vitals in the system. Nothing major. Just enough to stall progress and muddy the recovery record. When I asked her why she was helping me, her eyes glossed. "I've seen men like him," she said. "And women like her." That was all she had to say. We were allies from that moment on. By day 4, my official status on the hospital charts was non-responsive. Alex had even contacted an old colleague of his to pose as a neurologist and sign off on it. Everything was falling into place. Then, Chloe showed up. She entered like she was doing charity work, dressed in soft pastels and false grief. She brought a teddy bear and placed it beside me like we were still 10 years old and playing house. I could feel the rage boil beneath my skin as she smoothed my hair and whispered, "I hope you find peace, Sam." Peace. That was her version of a goodbye. Her way of laying the final nail. But I wasn't dead. I wasn't even close. The most difficult part came that night. Derek returned again, and this time, Chloe came with him. They stood over me, speaking in hushed tones, touching my hand, the way mourners do when they're practicing for a funeral. I kept my breathing shallow, let my eyes roll back a little, just enough to mimic unconsciousness. Chloe leaned down and kissed my forehead. "She's not going to make it," she whispered. "We need to start preparing." They left not long after, and the moment the door closed, I let my facade drop. My muscles ached from the tension, but I didn't care. It was working. They believed it. They thought I was slipping away, but I was rising. And they had no idea what was coming. It was astonishing how quickly everything I believed about my life unraveled. As I lay in my hospital bed pretending to fade, the true web of betrayal grew darker by the hour. Every beep of the heart monitor, every idle step of a nurse down the hall, gave me time to think. But it was the footage, cold, quiet video feeds piped into my tablet by Alex, that gave me truth. He'd wired up my house in less than a day. Hidden cameras in the hallway sconces, a tiny lens tucked into a faux bookend on the living room shelf, another in the guest bathroom vent. All of them streamed to a secure line he'd routed to a device that looked like a simple hospital-issued iPad, but was anything but. The first time I saw Chloe coming down the stairs in my robe, barefoot, sipping from my favorite mug, something in me died. She looked so at home because she was. She had made herself at home in my life. It wasn't just Derek she stole. It was everything. She moved through the house with practiced ease. She knew where everything was: keys, remotes, even the bottle of rose lotion I used to keep tucked in the drawer of my nightstand. It sat on her vanity now. The nightstand, of course, was hers too. But it was the bedroom feed that nearly broke me. Chloe climbed into bed next to Derek like they'd been doing it for years. No shame. No secrecy. His hand reached for her under the sheets like it was second nature. I watched, hands clenched so hard my nails dug half-moons into my palms. There was no guilt between them, not even in the quiet moments. Only comfort. And planning. One night, Alex caught a conversation between them on the bedroom mic. "She can't hang on forever," Derek muttered, adjusting his pillow. "The doctors said it's a matter of time." "And if it's not?" Chloe's voice, cool and laced with annoyance. "Then we push for a decision. She wouldn't want to live like this. She told me that once." "You better hope someone else heard it too," she said. "Because I'm not going to prison for this." They both laughed. I did not. Alex sent me files daily, bank statements, credit card transactions, withdrawal records from accounts I didn't even realize Derek had access to. There were charges for spa visits under Chloe's name. A payment for a honeymoon suite in Bali, already reserved. They hadn't even waited for my body to cool before planning their celebration. The cherry on top? My signature on a set of financial documents authorizing the sale of one of our investment properties. Only I never signed it. The handwriting was close, too close. Someone had studied it. Someone who'd known me since childhood. The weight of it all threatened to crush me, but anger held me upright. There were moments, quiet ones in the middle of the night, where my mind would drift and wonder, how long had this been going on? Had Chloe and Derek been together for months? Years? Was this a crime of opportunity or a plan forged from years of secrets and stolen glances? Alex, bless him, never asked how I was holding up. He didn't coddle me. He gave me facts, options, timelines. "We build the case slowly," he said. "Then we make the first move." And the nurse, Elena, she became more than just an ally. She adjusted my charts, made it look like I was still slipping. On the outside, I was declining. But internally, I was working with Alex to prepare for the strike. Each new piece of evidence was another weight I added to my arsenal. A login record to Chloe's email from Derek's IP address. A video clip of Chloe holding up her hand, showing off the soulmate tattoo they got inked on their wrists. A transaction record of Derek canceling our couple's therapy appointment 2 days after my accident. But what drove the knife deepest was a recorded call Alex recovered from a burner phone. Derek telling an unknown contact, "Once the life insurance clears, I'll be free to do what I want." It's all set. That was all I needed. Every betrayal. Every stolen dollar. Every whispered plan to erase me from my own life. It was all documented now. And when I finally rose, it wouldn't be in silence. Derek and Chloe thought they had buried me. But I was digging too. And I was about to hit pay dirt. 3 days after Chloe slipped into my bed and called it hers, Derek found the envelope. It was early morning. He'd just returned from the gym, the same one he used to mock me for joining when I wanted to feel stronger. The doorbell rang while he was toweling off in the kitchen. Barefoot and shirtless, he ambled to the front door and opened it to find no one there. Just a plain white envelope resting neatly on the welcome mat, its flap sealed and unmarked. No return address, no stamp. A ghost of a chill swept in as he bent to pick it up. I watched the whole thing unfold in real time from the hospital, barely able to breathe as I stared at the live feed. His expression shifted the moment he turned it over in his hands. Curiosity became confusion, then suspicion. He took it inside, grabbed a knife from the drawer, the one I used to use for cutting lemons, and sliced the envelope open with a practiced flick of his wrist. I could almost hear the breath catch in his throat when he slid out the single photograph inside. It was a still image of me, sitting upright in my hospital bed, eyes open and locked directly on the lens. No tubes. No slack jaw. Just me. Alert. Watching. I'd asked Alex to take the photo 2 days earlier, after we adjusted the camera angles and lighting. I'd made sure my posture was strong, my gaze unflinching. It was a message, not just an image. On the back of the photo, printed in bold red type, were 2 words. Tick, tock. Derek stared at the picture for a full minute, as if by looking harder he could change what it meant. He moved to the window and yanked the curtain aside, scanning the street for a car, a person, a threat. There was nothing. No one. He stormed upstairs, nearly tripping over the cat that had once been mine, but now curled affectionately at Chloe's feet. She was brushing her teeth in the master bath when he barged in, waving the photo like it was radioactive. What the hell is this? Chloe, fresh-faced and barefoot, took the photo and blinked at it. I watched her knees nearly buckle. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." "She's comatose," Derek snapped, pacing now. "They said she wasn't responsive, brain activity minimal. But she's..." looking straight at the camera. Derek snatched the photo back and stared at it again. "Who the hell took this? How? When?" Their fear poured through the screen like static. Chloe reached for her phone. "I'm calling the hospital." "Don't," he barked. "We can't draw attention. If she's awake and playing us." "Then she knows," Chloe said, her voice cracking. "She knows everything." They didn't speak for several seconds. Derek sat down heavily on the edge of the bed I used to sleep in, head in his hands. Chloe hovered near the window, still clutching her phone, hands trembling. "If she's awake," Derek said slowly, "we need to get ahead of this. Find out how much she knows. Before she goes to the police. Before it goes public." "Do you think she has proof?" "If she does, and she's playing possum, then yeah, she's building something. A case. A trap. We need to talk to a lawyer." Chloe lowered her phone. "She's going to ruin us." "No," Derek said, his voice low and dangerous. "We do what we have to." I felt my heart tighten at those words because I recognized the shift in his tone. This wasn't panic anymore. This was planning. The same cold calculation he used to win legal cases, to negotiate deals, to lie with a straight face in front of cameras. He was preparing for the next step, contingency plans. Damage control. But there wasn't a plan in the world that could save them from what was coming. Back at the hospital, I turned off the feed and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. My hair was flat and dull, my face pale and thin, but my eyes, they burned. Not with grief anymore. Not even rage. Purpose. That's what had taken root in me now. They were scared. For the first time since the crash, I had the power. They didn't know how deep my recovery ran, how much I'd already seen, how many files Alex had backed up in triplicate. They didn't know that I'd made a list of every transaction, every lie, every scrap of betrayal, and handed it to someone who wasn't afraid to burn their lives down for me. Tick, tock, Derek. Tick, tock, Chloe. Your time is running out. I stood in the hallway of the country club, the black dress hugging my body like armor. It had taken weeks of grueling physical therapy and whispered coordination with Alex to reach this moment. My body was still sore in places I didn't talk about, and my steps weren't as smooth as they once were, but I stood tall, confident, alive, and most importantly, unexpected. Derek's voice echoed from the ballroom just beyond the double doors. I could hear the buzz of chatter and the soft chime of wine glasses. Laughter. Sympathy. Lies. They were throwing a memorial for me. For the woman they thought was gone. Chloe and Derek had invited friends, colleagues, family, each one unknowingly celebrating a murder that never happened. I adjusted the black veil covering part of my face and looked at Alex, who stood beside me in a pressed suit, his expression unreadable. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low. I nodded. More than ever. He opened the doors. The room fell silent. At first, no one really processed what they were seeing. A few heads turned, thinking I might be some late arrival they didn't recognize. But then someone gasped. And another dropped their glass. Then Chloe turned. Her face went pale. The blood drained so quickly it was like someone had flipped a switch. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. I watched the champagne flute slip from her hand and shatter on the floor. Derek was mid-sentence at the podium, hand poised dramatically in the air as if delivering a heartfelt eulogy. When he saw me, he froze. His lips moved, forming my name without sound. His face turned the same shade of white as Chloe's. The microphone in his hand picked up the noise of his sharp inhale, then a thud as it dropped to the ground. I stepped forward slowly. Not rushing. Not dramatic. Just enough for the sound of my heels to echo against the marble. I let them stare. Let them absorb the impossible. "Hello, everyone," I said calmly, removing the veil. People began to murmur. Some took steps back. Others just stood there in shock. I turned my gaze to Derek, locking eyes with him. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." A ripple of awkward, Nervous laughter swept the room, not because it was funny, but because no one knew what else to do. Everyone looked at each other, waiting for someone to explain. Derek stepped forward, clearing his throat, trying to recover his performance. Samantha, I thought you were gone. I tilted my head. So did you. Chloe had retreated halfway behind a table, one trembling hand clinging to the edge. I turned to her, letting the weight of my stare do the talking. She didn't say a word. Couldn't. I wanted to see what it looked like. I continued, circling the room slowly, addressing the stunned guests. What it felt like to be buried alive by the people you trusted most, and to be mourned by the ones who tried to kill you. A woman gasped. Someone in the back stepped away from Derek like he was contagious. I woke up in that hospital bed and heard them plotting. Heard them talk about insurance money and soulmates. They made it sound so inevitable. Derek tried to cut in. That's not true. It is, I said, louder now, voice steady. And you know it. I pulled a small device from my clutch and clicked it. A recording of their conversation from the hospital hallway began to play. Loud, clear, devastating. She's finally out of the picture. The room turned on them like wolves scenting blood. Friends became witnesses. Sympathizers became spectators. Derek and Chloe stood frozen, cornered not by me, but by their own words. I ended the playback and tucked the recorder away. Then I looked around the room, at the stunned faces who would carry this moment like a brand. I came back, I said, turning one last time to Derek and Chloe, not for revenge, but for truth. And now, the truth is yours too. And with that, I walked away from the grave they dug for me, very much alive. By the next morning, I wasn't just a ghost come back to life. I was a storm. The reappearance had done more than shake them, it had shattered their carefully constructed illusion. The footage played again and again on social media, shot from the phones of stunned guests. Me walking into the room, the recording playing, Derek's expression frozen in pale disbelief. News outlets ran headlines like, "Wife declared nearly dead returns to expose husband and sister in murder plot." It was theatrical, cinematic. But more importantly, it was true. Alex and I had prepared for this moment. The very next day, I walked into the courthouse, not hidden in shadows, but flanked by my attorney and Alex at my side. My gait was slow, but deliberate. Let them see the bruises that still lingered, the scars just beginning to heal. Let them see what I survived. Inside, we filed the first wave of charges: fraud, attempted murder, identity theft. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Camille Torres, had already drafted everything. She didn't flinch when she handed over the paperwork, didn't hesitate to speak the names of the accused aloud to the clerk, Derek Caldwell and Chloe Simmons. The woman behind the counter blinked. She knew those names. Everyone did now. But that was just the beginning. Within an hour, detectives arrived at Derek's office mid-interview with a news anchor trying to spin our reunion into a tragic misunderstanding. As he leaned into the camera to offer a statement of relief over my miraculous return, the officer tapped his shoulder. "Mr. Caldwell? You're under arrest." The camera kept rolling. He was cuffed in front of the world. Chloe's downfall was quieter, but no less satisfying. The authorities froze her bank accounts, and her employer placed her on immediate leave. Alex had sent over flagged documents showing her name on illegal withdrawals and the forged power of attorney. Her voice was on that recording too, laughing about the insurance payout, talking about starting fresh. I watched the live coverage from the safety of a quiet apartment Alex had set up for me, under a different name, rented in cash. It had wide windows and light floors, a view of the park, and the kind of stillness I hadn't known in months. I sipped tea and let the silence hold me. They had underestimated me. That had been their first mistake. The second? Leaving behind a trail wide enough to hang themselves with. The internet swarmed with theories and debates, but I kept my head down. It wasn't about public opinion. It was about facts. About justice. About clawing back everything they tried to steal from me, my life, my voice, my identity. One of the most damning moments came when the video of their hospital conversation was played on national news. Derek's voice, clear, cruel, conspiratorial, boomed across televisions and phones everywhere. "She's finally out of the picture." That single sentence sealed their fate. I knew it wouldn't all be swift. The legal system wasn't perfect. They had lawyers, influence. Chloe was already pleading innocence, trying to claim Derek manipulated her. Derek, predictably, denied everything and insisted I had misinterpreted things in a vulnerable state. But the evidence we'd built over weeks, surveillance, financial trails, emails, voice recordings, was bulletproof. Camille smiled after our first court hearing. "They're flailing. You've got them pinned." I didn't respond right away. I just looked out the window at the skyline. For so long, I'd stared at hospital ceilings, wondering if I'd ever be more than a victim. Now, I was watching the fall of two people who tried to bury me. Let them drown in the mess they made. Let them taste a sliver of the helplessness they handed me. And let them know I wasn't done yet. The house went first. It had always been Derek's pride, a symbol of our carefully curated life. He'd insisted on the marble counters, the wine cellar we never used, the imported tile that drove our renovation budget through the roof. I had loved parts of it once, the garden, the sunroom, but it had become a gilded cage. A place where I was slowly erased. A backdrop to betrayal. The morning it sold, I stood across the street in a simple black coat, watching as the new owners, a young couple with a toddler, walked up the front steps, keys in hand. A fresh start for them. And for me, the final nail in a life I no longer mourned. Derek had tried to stop it, of course. He'd called from jail, screaming through the collect call connection, accusing me of spite, of pettiness. But the truth was, his name had been removed from the deed months before, back when I'd trusted him with power of attorney for a brief, foolish moment. He'd transferred full ownership to me to simplify things. A signature I kept. A gift he never meant to give. Alex found the paper trail and restored my rights. It was poetic justice. Then came the car. His sleek, midnight blue sports car. Leased in my name, paid with money he embezzled from our joint accounts, was towed from Chloe's temporary condo while she stood barefoot in a robe, screaming at the tow truck driver. The video of her cursing and flailing went viral within hours. I didn't even have to lift a finger. She did the job for me. With their finances frozen, everything unraveled fast. Chloe's credit cards bounced. Her gym membership was revoked. The luxury brands stopped calling. She tried staying with friends, but no one wanted the PR mess. She'd burned through everyone, including family. Funny how that happens when the truth comes out. I watched it all unfold from my new office, a minimalist space in a downtown building that smelled like eucalyptus and fresh ink. It was mine. Entirely mine. The business Derek tried to steal, the one he claimed wasn't scalable, now stood taller than ever. I'd renamed it Nurse Lily, in honor of the quiet woman who had shielded me during my faked coma without asking for anything in return. The woman who covered my vitals, lied to Derek's face, and held my hand when the trauma crept in late at night. The first contract came from a mental health clinic looking to expand its grief recovery program. Then another followed, an educational nonprofit seeking trauma-informed coaching. The work was steady, meaningful. Mine. I poured everything into it, every ounce of grief and fury and will. I rebuilt the structure from the ground up with people I trusted, most of whom had walked through their own fires. The most satisfying part? Using the same network Derek dismissed as too soft to win clients he once failed to secure. I didn't need his charm. I had facts, results, empathy. I had scars that told a story clients respected. And I never pretended to be perfect anymore. I just showed up real. Every week, I received status updates from my legal team. Derek remained behind bars, denied bail due to the severity of the charges and the weight of the evidence. Chloe? She was out on bond, barely holding it together. Her attempts to garner public sympathy failed spectacularly. Every interview revealed just how deeply she'd woven herself into the fraud. And the court of public opinion was no longer on her side. Not after hearing her own voice describing my death as convenient. Occasionally, I'd receive messages, thinly veiled apologies, half-hearted pleas for mercy. One came from Chloe herself. "We were lost, Sam. I didn't mean for it to go that far." I didn't respond. Another came from Derek's lawyer, suggesting a deal. A quiet settlement could preserve what's left of everyone's dignity. I laughed when I read it. Dignity. As if either of them remembered what that felt like. The days grew easier. The pain dulled, softened by purpose. But I never forgot. I let it live in a compartment all its own, a place I could visit when I needed to remember what I'd survived, and why I wouldn't go back. One morning, while I watered the plants on my small apartment balcony, my phone buzzed with a notification. A photo. From Alex. It showed a plain auction sign being nailed into the lawn of what used to be Chloe's condo. Her assets were officially seized. The caption underneath simply read, "Everything they wanted, gone." I stared at it for a long time, not with glee, but with something quieter. Resolution. Justice, not revenge. I dreamed of this moment when the scales would finally balance. But the truth was, it didn't feel explosive. It felt quiet. Clean. Like something that had been long overdue finally slid into place. It was the sound of peace returning after chaos. Later that week, I stood in front of a mirror, adjusting the neckline of a navy blue blazer for a photo shoot. A small media company had asked to feature my new business and my story of recovery. I had declined at first. Press coverage was a double-edged sword, but then I thought of the women who might see it. The ones in hospital beds, feeling erased. The ones pretending to be asleep while listening to the people they love plan their exit. They needed to know survival wasn't the end of the road. It was the start. Before the photographer arrived, I took one last look at myself in the mirror. My body bore marks that might never fade, scars across my ribs, the tight line along my collarbone, but I stood tall. I wasn't the woman who begged to be loved anymore. I wasn't someone's wife or sister or victim. I was Samantha Caldwell no longer. I was Samantha Hale, rebuilt from wreckage, standing in the aftermath, whole in a way I'd never been before. And this time, no one was going to take anything from me again. A year later, I stood at the center of the bookstore, a pen in one hand and a line of people curling past the shelves in front of me. The sign behind me read author event, Samantha Hale, Till Death, How I Survived My Husband's Murder Plot. It still felt surreal. The cover of the memoir was bold, stark white with a single red fingerprint over the title. Alex helped me choose it. He said it was simple, visceral, unforgettable. Much like the story it held inside. A woman approached the table next, holding her copy to her chest like it was fragile. She looked at me with watery eyes. "Thank you for writing this. I'm going through something similar. Reading your words made me feel less crazy." I reached for her hand and gave it a squeeze. "You're not crazy. You're just seeing clearly." She nodded, pressing her lips together before moving aside for the next reader. It kept happening, woman after woman, person after person, each one with a story, a wound, a quiet ache in their voice. I didn't expect this part. I had written the book to reclaim my voice, to close a chapter. But it had opened doors for others, given them words they hadn't been able to say for themselves. And now here I was, smiling for cameras, no longer hiding behind trauma. I had survived Derek. I had exposed Chloe. I had watched everything they built crumble beneath the weight of their own cruelty. But that wasn't the part that defined me. It was what came after. In the months following the trial, I invested the book advance into expanding Nurse Lily into 2 more cities. We offered coaching, therapy referrals, group healing sessions. Survivors came to our doors not just broken, but ready. Ready to take their stories back. Just like I had. Alex had stayed in town, consulting now and then on tough cases, helping others the way he helped me. Sometimes he'd show up at my office with coffee and sarcasm, pretending he wasn't checking in. But I knew better. He had become something rare in my life. Safe. I glanced up and saw him now, leaning against the wall of the bookstore, arms crossed and a small smile tugging at his lips. He gave me a nod when our eyes met. I returned it, heart steady. After the last person in line handed me their book, the event organizer leaned in. "You're a natural," she said. "We've had a lot of signings, but this one felt like something bigger." I smiled, though I wasn't sure how to explain it. It was bigger. It wasn't just about selling copies or telling a story. It was about reclaiming a life and offering a blueprint for others to do the same. I packed my things slowly, savoring the quiet after the crowd thinned out. Alex walked over, hands in his pockets. "You sure know how to make a comeback," he said. I looked around the bookstore, the tables, the shelves, the faces lingering nearby. "It's not a comeback," I said, my voice calm. "It's my first real beginning." And I meant it. Because revenge wasn't the end of my story. It was the catalyst. Survival wasn't the finish line. It was the starting gate. I left that building not as the woman who'd been nearly killed, not as the wife or sister of anyone. I was simply Samantha. Author. Founder. Survivor. Whole. Comeback queen? Maybe. But really, I was just getting started.